A look now at what's at stake for Canada in this climate of rising nuclear tensions. We spoke to James Fergusson. He's the Deputy Director of the Centre for Defence and Security Studies at the University of Manitoba. We reached him in Las Vegas. You've argued that basically Canada has a do-nothing policy when it comes to North Korea. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at the statements of the government, in particular the Prime Minister, what have we said to the world and to Canadians? One, we condemn the nuclear tests in North Korea, not surprising. Call for direct diplomatic engagement with North Koreans. We're not involved. Support the North Korean sanctions program as laid out by the Security Council. We have no really economic interchange with the North Koreans. And we call that we will work with our partners in the region, which means absolutely nothing, because we had said nothing about what we would do with them. So if you add it all up, it's a do-nothing policy.
What should Canada do?
Well, I think Canada should do several things. First of all, I think it should make it clear where it stands on this issue. More than just saying we condemn the North Korean nuclear program, when we talk about working with our allies, we should talk clearly about support for the United States, for South Korea, for Japan, the importance of backing them and demonstrating to our allies and to our own citizens that we do have this important commitment there. Beyond that, we need to take some consideration or concerns about the potential defense implications or security implications for Canada if this goes bad. And this, of course, is the concern about the potential ability of the North Koreans to target North America with intercontinental ballistic missiles, potentially married to nuclear weapons. On the diplomatic front, we really aren't going to do anything because there's nothing we can do. Although we like to talk about ourselves as mediators and somehow we might be able to develop some special relationship perhaps with Pyongyang, that's simply not on. But it's important, I think, that we signal clearly to everyone where we stand on this issue beyond simply condemning it.
If this goes bad, to use your words, what's the real risk for Canada?
Well, the real risk for Canada, if for whatever reasons or scenarios you can imagine that would lead the North Koreans to launch an ICBM or more than one against North America, the general view in Canada, within the government, among most Canadians, is that we wouldn't be a direct target. They would be targeting the United States, not least of all because the North Koreans have never mentioned us in their rhetoric as a potential target. So if you just take that potentially be true, and may not be, the real risk for Canada is twofold. One, that we become an accidental target because of the flight paths of North Korean warheads which travel over Canada to targets in the United States. And given the proximity of our cities and the questionable technology, they haven't really mastered the technology as the United States, the Russians, and the Chinese have. There are a variety of considerations in terms of guidance where the missiles could fall short, and we would end up being an inadvertent target. The second area, which is minor, and I would add that both of these cases are very low probability. The second would be the possibility that the North Koreans would consider Canada as a demonstration target. A launch against a Canadian target somewhere in the remote north, for example, to demonstrate to Washington that they are serious and they can do this. Again, as I said earlier, both are low probability. The issue for Canada, however, is the high consequences if the government is wrong.
In one of these scenarios, I know you told a group of parliamentarians that in either one of those cases that we should just get down on our knees and pray. We don't have much recourse. What were you driving at there?
Well, the basic point I'm driving at, which was echoed at the meetings of the Standing Committee by General Saint-Amand, is that the United States policy is not to defend Canada. The U.S. missile defense capabilities, those forward deployed in the North Pacific, those in Alaska, are dedicated to the defense of American targets. There are certain circumstances where perhaps they might defend us, although that's a moral question, which is somewhat reprehensible in my view, that the weight we put on the Americans to defend us. But the key point is that if that were to happen, there's nothing we can do. So our only option is to get on our knees and pray.
Do you think that it's realistic to even think that Canada could insert itself into that decision-making process, given the politics in the U.S. at this point?
Well, it's not a question of inserting ourselves in the decision-making process, and a lot of this is the real story underneath it, and that's the question of participating in the U.S. missile defense program. And unfortunately, in the debate in Canada, we missed the point. And the point for Canada is do we consider it worth the investment to develop and acquire, by and large through cooperation with the United States, our own missile defense capabilities? And I'm not speaking of a very large capability, but certainly perhaps several interceptors where we could use them against the potential fallout from an accidental shot that might hit Canada. In those circumstances, this would then engage us in the United States, because that becomes potential value as well to the defense of North America, of the continental United States. And then we can start talking about how we can cooperate more deeply and insert ourselves, in effect, in the American decision-making process, because we have something important to bring to the table.
Do you see any indication from this Canadian government that they would be prepared to take those kinds of steps?
No, none whatsoever. The recent white paper, Strong, Engaged, and Secure, however it's labeled, doesn't raise the issue of missile defense at all. It basically says it won't change policy, although it does talk about perhaps expanding cooperation in North American defense through NORAD and modernization. What that means, we don't know. I fear that there's a sense among the government, or many in Ottawa, that the U.S. actually will defend us. They wouldn't stand idly by given the potential political fallout of allowing a Canadian city to be destroyed. I also fear that they have a misunderstanding of the NATO arrangement, Article 5, the Collective Defense Agreement, which Canada and the United States are allies through, that the United States would be forced to defend us. And that's not what Article 5 says, and that's a different problem. So I think everyone's wishing it away, and then there's a set of other wishes that are brought along. The missile defense system won't work, so why bother, et cetera, et cetera. We've put our head in the sand.
Mr. Fergusson, I thank you for your perspective on this.
My pleasure.